Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another couple of days in my life. I have been feeling so vloggy lately. I think it might be because my boyfriend left to go to the US and so I'm alone, and I feel like most of my family and my boyfriend are asleep during my day. And so other than the friends that I see day to day, you guys are the ones that are really keeping me company. And also I think I'm just getting a little bit tired of like planning out more chatty kind of content because oftentimes I feel like it has to be more like polished when I'm, doing book recs or just sharing my thoughts about that kind of stuff. And it just feels like there's a little bit more pressure associated with those videos, and so I've been really enjoying watching vlogs, and yeah, I've been really enjoying making them. I think the next few days are gonna have some of my usual work vibes, like kind of cozy reading, but then I also have quite a few social plans, and so I'm excited to see what we get up to and just kind of enjoy the city. That being said, you wouldn't know it by my hat, but actually this morning was so gray and rainy. I have the hat on because I just could not be bothered to wash my hair, but I ended up going to a cozy sort of cafe nearby that I love. Just had like a hot coffee, the rain was coming down, it was such a nice vibe, and I mostly read and wrote. It's been a while since I've had a morning in a cafe where I haven't been working or something like that, so it was really nice just to kind of have that bit of time for myself, especially on sort of like a cozy day like today. I did wake up in just a bit of a funk. I think my allergies have gotten really bad in the past couple of weeks, maybe due to the rain and stuff like that. And then I also just put a ton of caffeine in my body, which gets my brain going, but also gets like the more negative parts of my brain going too, as y'all probably know. And so that is just sort of the vibe we're dealing with today. It's all right. I feel like I'm probably gonna have a cozy day in, just like working in my room, and then maybe get out to do like a yoga class later today. That might be like the max that I do. But I did want to talk about a book I finished recently, Madonna in a Fur Coat. You guys have probably seen this. It's come up in a couple like booktube channels and like Bookstagram and stuff, but I chose it as my September book club pick, and it was actually really fun. Like, I think the beginning was pretty slow, and I also was like, these characters feel a little bit flat or like almost like folk tale-y. Like, as the book developed and as the central relationship of the book really came to light and like we were kind of immersed in that world, I was very invested, and like I just loved the way the book talked about relationships and love and interest and just like obsession even. And I don't know if it's the most realistic portrayal, but I do think that I see why it's so popular right now. Like, even though it came out, I'm pretty sure in like the 40s, like 1940s or something in Turkey, it feels so fresh. Like, it's kind of crazy. I don't know if it's the translation, but it just feels like it could be about a relationship today. We have, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, like everything in between. And I think that's what was so fun about it. Like, it really, you can't tell that it was written so much in the past, other than the fact that sort of post First World War Germany shows up, and it's kind of like the setting of the whole book. Yeah, it was honestly a really easy read too, so if you're looking for like a classic but that's fun and feels like super relevant, and also you kind of want to lose yourself in like an interesting relationship and kind of think about those questions of love and things like that. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think there's like real love in the book for me anyway, but obviously maybe that's like up to interpretation, and that could be kind of fun too, like determining what is love and what is obsession and stuff like that. So anyways, all I'll say is like definitely stick through the first little bit of the book because it can be a bit of a slog, but I think it just picks up really quickly once you get to sort of like the story within the story. Otherwise, this morning I just started reading Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico. This is a book I've mentioned a couple of times and saying like I wanted to read it, and I'm finally getting around to it, and it's pretty short as well, so I'm excited. I think I'll be able to hopefully finish it this week. But essentially it's about a couple in Berlin that's like living the perfect hipster life, and I've only read like honestly like maybe 20 pages, so I don't know how it's gonna fall apart or like what the major conflict is or whatever, but it seems like it's kind of making a satire of their life, but I'm not sure because like the beginning it was literally just this beautiful aesthetic description of their apartment, which in some ways is like every hipster apartment, but also like one of the people in my book club said this, but it's like aesthetics that I'm super familiar with, and also in some ways like I don't hate, like, you know, an apartment full of plants and like food and spices and like, I don't know, just nice like books and records and stuff. Like it's very cliche, but also at the same time like it's not that far off from my personal taste, and I think that's maybe what the book is for sort of like people in their 20s and 30s, like Gen Z millennials who kind of like really want to aestheticize their lives, to like look at this and kind of confront their reality, but I'm feeling that. So I'm really interested in seeing where it's gonna go. It's also just fun because I think a lot of books have been written by people who live that lifestyle, about that lifestyle, but not many like making a satire out of it or almost like looking at it through like almost an anthropological lens of like, why are these people like, why do they make these decisions, why are they obsessed with individuality? And you know, it's a pretty short book. I don't know if it's gonna have enough space to explore all those questions, but I feel like it feels like such a 2020s book, if that makes sense, and I wonder if like those types of books will like kind of define our time. Okay, I'm gonna stop yapping now and get back to work, maybe make a cup of tea, put on some nice, you know, calming jazz or something, and yeah, back to the grind. Yes.
너도 좋아하는구나.
나 엄청 좋아해, 고수. 오케이.
그치. 이게 또 좋대, 그치? 근처 아닌가? 그치?
맞아.
처음 알았거든. 저기 찍었다가
아, 그 중앙 방금? 거기 난리인데. Good evening, everyone. I'm back from such an amazing day with my friend Wonjin. We were in like the Gwanghwamun Angguk Samcheongdong area today, and it was so beautiful. Like the weather was just perfect. Everyone looked so happy just to be out in the fall weather, and we got some lunch, just caught up, and also saw a bunch of exhibitions at the MMCA, which is like the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art. I always love going because they recycle their exhibitions quite often, and also they have a bunch of rooms, like I would say like 5 to 6 different like sort of rooms and exhibitions going on at once, and it's really fun just to see. Today was special because they've just opened their new exhibitions for like the Korea Artist Prize or something, like this year's sort of Young Artist Prize, and so we got to see like 4 different exhibitions that each artist had made after like I think 2 years of commission from the museum and from other organizations, and it was so interesting. I feel like it was really fun, and I definitely got to see a lot of stuff, but I felt like it was a lot of art where I felt less moved or connected to the art itself and more interested in sort of like the explanation behind the art or sort of the thought process, which I guess is fine. But me and Wonjin were having this funny conversation afterwards where there was also an exhibit where they show like the classics sort of Korean modern art, so like maybe like the 1950s to 1990s, and we both really enjoyed those works and like sort of just paintings and such beautiful stuff. And I feel like maybe it's also because no one really loves the era that they're growing up in, or they don't really process it as an artistic era. But I do think that there's just an interesting thing happening with a lot of art and culture nowadays, and also in literature as well, which is why I'm kind of bringing it up, which is like I feel like everything has to have like a message and a point, especially like a political or social message. And I think that a lot of great works do, and I do think that art is inherently political, and so I think it always will be infused into whatever artistic work is created. At the same time, I do think like I don't know where aesthetics has gone. I'm partially joking, but I feel like we don't talk about enough how like beautiful our writer's writing is, or like even what beautiful writing looks like. And obviously it's different for people, it's subjective, but that's the whole point. But I feel like that's not really in like the discourse of literature or art anymore. It's much more about what is it about, what is it addressing, and also because of like there's like a cult of the artist, it's like what did they want to do with this. And I feel like very rarely do we think about like when we look at a work of art or like read a book, like how did that make us feel on its own, if that makes sense. Did it make you feel bored, or was the writing like really electric and something different or whatever. I feel like those things are less discussed and also less like awarded and sort of like given attention in our current time. I don't know, do you guys feel similarly? Maybe this is like not that big of a deal and it's not something that you've really noticed, but I think I just had that thought kind of going through the art museum today of like I just feel like everything that's being put on a pedestal like recently, a lot of it is about like content and what they're like daring to take on and stuff, but then sometimes we don't really talk about the fact that like the actual substance isn't really there, and yeah, maybe it's like style over substance or whatever, as Paula Hollywood says. So anyways, I thought that was just kind of like an interesting thought we had after our museum day, but it was really, really fun. Otherwise, I got home, had dinner, and finished up another manuscript for a deadline tomorrow, which I'm feeling so good to have that off my chest. And I'm also making decent progress on Perfection. Like I mentioned, it's really short, and I definitely want to talk about it. It's like just I'm so absorbed in this story and like what it's trying to say. Again, ironic because I know I just said like why are we talking about like sort of like subject matter of books more than their style, but I do really enjoy the style. It feels very anthropological almost in the writing, but it's also very beautiful, translated so impeccably. I see why it was shortlisted for the Booker, and yeah, it's just, but then the subject matter on its own also feels kind of interesting because it's like a very honest look into gentrification, into like hipster culture, into sort of like the young millennial Gen Z sort of dream, if that makes sense. And that's been really fun. Hopefully I'll finish that this week and come back with some more thoughts. Otherwise, I think I'm gonna get ready for bed and chill. I have been trying to look for more things to watch now that I have more time on my own. I feel like today I just saw that there was an Emma Watson podcast interview for the first time in years, maybe first time ever, and I adore her. So I might watch that. It's like 2 hours long. Crazy. Or there's also a new K-drama called You and Me and Everything Else, I think, that Wonjin recommended, and also I've just been seeing it everywhere, so I might give that a try as well.
Trusting your instincts, realize that knowing looks different to each. When living authentic, do more exploring. It's deeper than knowing just what is essential for life that is thriving. Go deep, mute out the chatter, feel it.
So I just finished Perfection this morning and I want to talk about it. I don't even know where to begin with this book. Honestly, it's unlike anything I've read before. It was super short, first of all, and a super quick read, and it reads, I think I said this before, but it reads almost like an anthropological study of like this hipster couple who I'm guessing are originally Italian but have moved to Berlin, Anna and Tom, and it sort of details their like lifestyle in Berlin, like why they moved, and also kind of like their freelance like techie social media jobs, and then the communities that they're trying to find of like expats and also like just other young people who are working in the fields they're working in, who are also like artists and creatives and stuff, but then the hypocrisy and sort of like the vacuousness behind all of that. I'm not gonna lie, I really enjoyed it. Like I couldn't put it down, which is kind of funny for there being like basically no plot, but I just thought the social commentary and like the accuracy was so fun and interesting. And I've seen like mixed reviews around. I also went on Goodreads and was like reading what people said, and I feel like there might be a generational component to like the response. I'm gonna say this really tentatively because I don't want like maybe older readers have also connected to this and stuff, but it's a very millennial book, and I think as someone who is like between millennial and Gen Z, but basically Gen Z, but like also grew up with a lot of millennial sensibilities, I feel like it is just so relatable. Like genuinely, it's really on the nose as it like sort of like picks apart the life that a lot of us of that generation, or like maybe people who are slightly older than me too, like what you kind of dream of and what you're sold as like a perfect life, which is kind of like this untethered, like free life of a lot of like visual and sort of aesthetic pleasures, if that makes sense. The dream is to be able to afford like traveling at any time and seeing your friends at any time and like eating whatever you want and all this stuff. But then at the same time, like that expansive freedom never feels satisfying to people, and you're constantly searching for something new and something else. And I just thought that was so fun. Yeah, I feel like it's a very small subset of like the global population, but like people who are living in like sort of urban cosmopolitan places that are kind of like cool and like multicultural and international, like, you know, the Londoners, Berliners, New Yorkers, and even maybe Soulites of the world, I feel like should be reading this, because it is just such a like honest look into what a lot of those people want, and yet also kind of like how ridiculous it all looks from the outside. I thought I could read you guys some of my favorite lines because the book honestly makes its point completely for itself. Like I feel like it says it better than I ever could. One of them is, "The time that did not disappear through work was taken up by the city. Berlin was, to all intents and purposes, their main pastime, exploring it, understanding it, feeling part of it. In a way, it defined them much more than their profession did." I thought that was interesting because it really feels like sometimes among my like friends and stuff, like where you live, even the neighborhoods in which you live, like define you so much more than like what you do. And it's all about like being in cool places, like occupying cool places and neighborhoods and cafes and restaurants and stuff. I am not immune to this. I am so aware. But I feel like that's why this book was so refreshing. I really laughed at this part. It says, what was happening to the city, the replacement of its historical inhabitants with younger, wealthier newcomers, and the resulting price hikes and decline in diversity was gentrification, a term used almost exclusively by the people who caused it. I felt like this line really summed up the book and also kind of like the generational feel and anxiety really well, which it says, it did occur to them that had they arrived now, they probably wouldn't have found an apartment as good as theirs or not one they could afford. Sometimes this realization prompted a flicker of anxiety, as if the solid life they had built was merely an accident of timing. There were moments when they felt their identity was anchored not in their thoughts or deeds, but in something fickle and brittle, a roll of the dice. I just thought that was so interesting because I feel like it is simultaneously acknowledging the fact that I think for a lot of younger people, it's like there's so many more constraints on our lives now. I mean, in some ways not, because we have the internet and all that stuff, but in some ways, income inequality is like worse than it ever has been. Housing prices, like inflation, everything makes it so hard for like young people just to exist and like plan their lives and depend on anything securely. But I also feel like as a result of that, like a lot of people are constantly searching to like identify themselves with like, cities or culture or like these like very kind of like cliche hipster ideas of what a cool young person or like a aware, like politically correct young person is or whatever. Not saying I don't do that, but I do think that feels like ultimately so much more shakier of a foundation than like being able to say you're really from a place and like really know the people of that place and like all that stuff. And I don't know, I felt like in a way this book felt like a life that is somewhat adjacent to mine or like could be in a different world, something that I would have wanted. And I feel like thanks to books like these and also just like learning more, it's like I'm realizing I don't want a life that appears really perfect and that is so sort of ungrounded, if that makes sense. Like I feel like I want to be in a place and try and really inhabit it and like be of that place, if that makes sense, and also like not feel like the aesthetics of my life are what give me identity and also what give me joy on the day-to-day, because that is like so shaky, because as soon as those aesthetics are gone or like these aesthetics change because of trends and stuff, you have to like redefine your happiness every time. Anyways, that's what kind of like the book made me think about. I really enjoyed it. I totally understand why there's mixed opinions. There's not really character or like there's not really plot, but at the same time I feel like it's so well written, very well translated, and like I mentioned, like so on the dot about a ton of stuff that I've seen anyway in my own sort of life. So if any of what I just said sounds interesting, I definitely recommend it. Today is Saturday, so I've just been chilling at home, did like laundry and chores and stuff. And then after that, I am heading out for dinner tonight with some friends, and then we're also going to go out in the evenings. I'm excited because it's with two of my friends visiting from the US, and yeah, I don't really go out in like big groups of friends as much after college, honestly. So I think it'll be very fun. And yeah, until then, I'm going to have sort of like a cozier writing afternoon and then head out.